bum 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 ba dum bum 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 boom boom ba ba dum bum ba bum bum ba bum.
Okay, we're starting recording.
Look in the cabinet. In the cabinet.
So we're in the middle
Above
of
and
page
below.
Kufayin Gimel. And the line begins with the word Shaposhik. There are two lines, one below the other, starting with the same word Shaposhik, and we are on the second one.
How does it begin?
Shaposhik. We are aiming at identifying the level of Dibur for the purposes that we had before, the using name and all that. So we started from the initial hislapshus, connection of the neshama with the guf. Where this hislapshus can be called as an essential hislapshus, in the sense that there is no way that there could be a separation between them, not even for a moment. So this hislapshus, this levush, the garment of the guf, although it's only a garment, but this levush is so intricately connected and identified with the neshama that they cannot be separated, not even for a moment. Then there is the second level, and that is in thought.
So what was the first level?
The neshama in the guf. But the guf is the levush. The guf is the garment.
Okay.
The second level is the thought, but as we pointed out, I don't know to what extent this is a little bit of a subtle union. They're talking about oisi as a machshava, the letters of machshava.
As opposed to Machshava itself?
As opposed to machshava itself, right. The life element in the guf, which is the neshama, the presence of the neshama, the oira nefesh. That element is present at all levels. It's present on the essential life element of the guf, and all the koichos hanefesh that are part of this oira nefesh, such as seichel, midos, and all of these qualities, seichel and midos, are all sensed in the machshava. But that sensing of the seichel, there is that Chiddush explains that, and we discussed it many times, that there is a primary difference between the koiches makifim, it's called rotzen and noimeg, and the koiches pnimim, starting from seichel on down. That the koiches makifim are actually present in the entire body at the same time. Rotzen is not felt in one part of the body or the other. And oineg is likewise. This is what expresses itself throughout the body. This is what gives life to the entire person. Seichel, on the other hand, is something which has a keli, that's the brain. Midas have a keli, that's the heart. the inyan of Rotzen and Noinig, which is Makifim. And this is the essential sense in the person of having a neshama and being alive. That also is sensed primarily in the machshava. Even though the actual life element is everywhere. But where does a person know that he's alive?
When you say, is that what you call self-conscious?
Self-conscious?
Yeah.
It's not self-conscious. Self-conscious is already in Oisius. Conscious. And the fact that he's alive, that he knows that he is living, this is also in Machshava. And this is a constant Machshava, this is a constant Dinya HaChayis. Because Machshava is the most the finest element in the person in terms of his galus. This is why there he senses the inyan that is alive, but life itself is really present everywhere. Equally.
There being machshava?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to, in terms of semantics, the word they use is called innate consciousness, and it comes from within, not from outside experience, but from yourself.
Again.
No,
I understand. We're not aiming to identify that. The reason I went into this is to explain what the emphasis is of Beis and Machshava. In the highest order that comes from the nefesh into the guf, there are two distinct levels, you could say. There's one level where even though the nefesh is bihislapshus in the guf, but there's no change in that oir due to the fact that it's mislabish in the guf. It is nefesh in the guf. It remains purely nefesh. Doesn't adjust itself, so to speak, to the guf receptacle. This is called the chayas nefesh. Chayas never becomes part of the guf. The guf never understands what chayas is. You can live 170 years, you will never understand what it means to live. Seichel, it can relate to. Midas, you can relate to. It says Midas, you can actually feel the heart gets excited, the Seichel the brain gets affected. Chayus is not something that the guf can understand at all. Chayus is there because the nefesh is there, so there's a nefesh. It remains always the property of the nefesh. This is why on Masholim, we understand that? In Masholim that we talked about sunlight. In sunlight, we are not necessarily aware of this, but we discussed it many times. There is different elements in sunlight. There's sunlight that makes us see across the street. There is the sunlight that changes the entire phenomenon of the world. It's day. That day element is not something that the world is a receptacle to. It is simply that the sun takes over. And it's actually the presence of the sun that makes it. It's not something that ever becomes part of the quote-unquote the dark world. It can relate to it. Darkness and this light are two opposites. Light eliminates this darkness because of the presence. This is why I mentioned many times. This is why the Pasuk says, "As Hashemesh l'mem mamoyer hagod l'mem shelas vayeh." We say it in Tehillim. Hashemesh l'mem shelas vayeh. It rules. It's when the Shemesh rules. The Shemesh illuminates the world. Something to rules. Ruling means that it takes it over. It changes it according to its parameters. The world is no longer that world that is choshech primarily. It becomes light. That never becomes part of the world. This is just that where the sun takes over. The same is in the nefesh of the guf.
Taking over and just illuminating.
What?
What's the difference between that? What makes everything, if it's illuminating, means that it takes over, no?
Illuminating means that it enables you to see the object. Enables you to see the object is a phenomenon that is a combination of darkness and light. Without light you couldn't see it. With light you're able to see it. And we pointed out many times that the means by which we actually see an object is a combination of darkness and light. It's not just light. Light by itself does not enable you to see the object. How do we see an object? Because there is darkness, there's shading, and there is light, and the contrast. This is how you see it. So the darkness remains there. That just illuminates, makes you able to see. That is something which becomes part of the world. But the fact that it changes the entire perception, like in daytime, the concept of darkness in terms of an overall is lost completely. And we point out all the time that the sun, as it is setting, and 5 minutes from now the sun is going to be setting and it's going to be dark, and yet you can't imagine that it's going to happen because the whole phenomenon of darkness doesn't even exist at the time when the sun shines, because the sun is etzem behiri. That's what you pointed out. Etzem behiri means that it is light through and through. It is not light coming from darkness. There is no combination. There is no combining between darkness and sunlight as a combination, in the true union from sunlight. It's either light or dark. As we point out all the time, light to the sun is as fundamental and as real as darkness to us. So clearly these are two etzems. You can't, there's no compromise there. It happens that the etzem of light overpowers, so to speak. That's a lotion. It actually overpowers and eliminates the cheshach. And the reason that happens is because cheshach essentially is a koyach shlili, is a negative koyach. Light is a positive koyach. Positive takes over the negative. That's a separate thing. The point which I wanted to point out is that there is the chayes ha-nefesh in Mislavish in the guf, which remains nefesh. It's not behislapshus in the guf in the sense that the guf relates to it. It takes over. Then there is the Ayin, but you say the machshava. Machshava also there is that element. But life itself. Then there is oisi is a machshava. Oisi is a machshava. This is where the guf becomes aware of what the nefesh is telling it. This is oisi machshava. This is the principle of oisius. That oisius are receptacles for seichel and for midas, and the seichel can be mislavish in the oisius in such a way that you can take it and transfer it to somebody else. It becomes mamish hametzius.
I'm not sure. Oisios is when the guf becomes aware of what the neshama is telling it. But machshava without oisios is consciousness. you're also aware there, no?
Not in the guf level. Machshava is like one of the koiches that the nefesh emanates.
So what does that mean, consciousness, then, if the group is not aware of it? It's a neshama consciousness?
Yeah.
Neshama, so neshama has...
It remains neshama.
Neshama consciousness, even if it wasn't in the group, it would have machshava?
What?
Neshama with not mislavish in the group would have machshava?
No, it is mislavish, and therefore it becomes like a koyach. Just like sunlight. Sunlight also, even that which transforms our world, is also not sun per se. It is oira shemesh. This is also oira nefesh. And oira nefesh is in all the koiches, including machshava.
So the mashal for that.
But it's not a machshava. For example, we said a person can be alive and he is totally not conscious. He is in a coma.
Right.
So what happens then? What kind of life is it? The neshama is there in the guf, but the guf is not living in the sense of being affected by the neshama. It's not aware that that is alive. The oasis of machshava are not functioning.
But there's still machshava at that point?
There is some machshava, yes, but the machshava is as the nefesh is thinking to itself, not what the guf is thinking.
Not perceiving.
What?
The guf is not
The
perceiving.
guf is not. The guf does not to understand it on its level.
And the mashal for that you gave with the sunlight, with the etzem of the sunlight that rules the day, that the world does not, the world does not relate to that. The world is not with the world.
Right. It just eliminates worldliness,
Yeah.
and it becomes sun. This is why we said that oil should never be rishon. Oil should never be rishon. The oil that was created in the first day of creation. There was no sun. So vayomer Elokim yehi oil vayi oil. That oil could not be at all interpreted in worldly terms. There was no luminary. It's a light. It's a light that completely eliminates darkness. Light and darkness. This is the light, ultimately, as we explained many, many times. This is the light ultimately that sun at the highest level provides, that the sun actually has. Huh?
The highest level of
Of sunlight. The highest level of light that the sun has is this light. The Ramban says it's interesting that the oil should never be rishon. Hashem hid it into the sun. We discussed it many times in the phenomenon that the sun, if sunlight were just the result of burning fuel, then the fuel should have been burned down. The light should have been changed. The light doesn't change because the Rebbe gave light. This is mamash, one of the miracles that, if you think about it, it's an observable miracle, a constant miracle. This light is pure light, not light that comes from fire, but it's pure light. It's light that the Rebbe created. Just like the Rebbe created darkness, he created light.
and he created fire too, because
He created fire, but fire is more in a physical and a moral level.
yeah, but this fire doesn't come from fuel. This fire is also an excellent fire.
This fire comes from fuel, but it gets replenished. Loshen Chassidus is that it gets replenished. Because it burns, it gets replenished. But light is just what light is.
What is gets replenished? The question was that fuel burns out. So
Burned out, and then you can fill up again. You have a car. What happens if it burns out? You go to a gas station, and pump it in and pay $100 and you get it filled up again.
So how does it get? I mean, did I replenishes it? How?
Yeah. This is the Eibusha created. The sun should be. So it's there.
And we're talking about sun.
We're
because
talking
this is
about what we
mashal
didn't aim
for
to talk about.
What?
What?
We're talking about what?
What we didn't aim to talk about.
Oh.
We just
Okay, but we got into the sun and the light because this is a good mashal for us to understand nefesh, which is etzem
understand machshava versus oises a machshava.
One of them's like the sun, one's like the light. What?
One of them is like sun independent of the world. Not as received by the world.
Oh, machshava per se.
Not machshava.
Oisius.
Oises a machshava is that
light.
this is which is like as the world is able to interpret it and to acclimate to it.
Machshava itself.
Is nefesh. It's chayes itself.
Oisius HaMachshava is the lower level.
Oises a machshava is the lower level. Oises is the
Machshava-
presentation. Machshava per
Machshava
se.
here in Rabbi Paltiel Machshava here, as you're differentiating, this term doesn't mean the Koyach HaMachshava. It means something that's actually the Inyan of Machshava within the Nefesh.
It's synonymous with koyach hamachshava.
So
The nefesh presence in the guf is on the nefesh level. On the nefesh level there is chayus. Chayus has everything in it. Has seichel, has midas, has machshava. Machshava is in terms of it being known, like we said all the time, that Oyer the Pshat, that he presented himself in a presence, in a present state, that he is present rather than etzem. All right, so let's go on. Oisis a machshava is a pshat. This is really a levush. It's really a garment where the nefesh or the seichel is mislavish in these oisis, to the extent that the person, the guf, is actually aware of what he's thinking. That's what oisis a machshava. Via these oisis hamachshava, which is an active state, oisis, this level of thought is an active state of thought. This active state, the guf can be aware of. The guf is not aware of something passive, but the guf is aware of something active. This machshava is an active state in the brain. And it's a constant flow. That's what oisius are. It's a constant flow. And therefore the guf is as aware of, and the guf can relate to it. This is the life element of the neshama at the guf level. Like we pointed out the other day, that even a person is asleep, you touch him, he immediately wakes up. Why does he wake up? Because he was aware of an external presence, even though he was asleep. This means that the oisis hamachshava. He is talking into himself, but he's not. He has the oisis hamachshava. In other words, there is an active state, and therefore he is really present in the outside world.
Call his name as well.
His name, Ratmani, so that actually disturbs him. Even you give him a touch, he immediately responds. You call him a name, you interrupt his thought, so to speak. But if you touch, where is that? That means that he was aware of every aspect of his presence. This is called oisis hamachshava. These oisis hamachshava, this is also a garment of the nefesh, and it's a garment, as we said, it's a garment that takes the chayes nefesh as an independent, a separate presence. The goof actually can relate to and interpret in its own way, and it can even be exchanged. You can change your thought from one thought to another thought. And we said this Moshe Machshavi is a constant flow. It's constantly changing. Therefore, this chayus that is in Yoshes HaMachshava, this chayus, due to the fact that he cannot divest himself from it. But then on the other hand, he can exchange it. What is that? What is that? How is that represented in what we talk about the name, the shape? The name. This is like his name is being applied to an object. This inyan, this we spoke about then, that even though the object can be sold and somebody else's name can be applied to the object, this principle, I hope everyone get. What is the significance of the name being applied to the object? It's totally insignificant. It's an external thing. So we explained this is not an external thing. There's a profound reality to it. Because the whole principle that a person can own property is a uniquely human inyan. Animals cannot own property. The reason animals cannot own property is because they don't have that hispashtus, ha'oir, that real presence. A human being has a real presence. And since he has a real presence, property is part of the necessity of presence, and therefore he has real ownership of property. And when this name element, that his name is applied to property, is there whether it's applied to property or it's not. I mean, he has that quality. If he doesn't own any property, so it has not been executed. The truth is that there is no such thing that his name is not applied to property. And we said that halachically, daladamas shalodam koinas. Every person has daladamas. Because that's part of the union from the Yishpashas Hashem of the person.
To me, this in the name applied to objects would be that anything that comes into his possession would be his name is applied to it.
That's right.
No matter, and even if nothing was in his possession, he's also his daladamas.
He has daladamas. I said as every yid has daladamas in its Yisrael. On the basis of that, we can write a prusbul. There's all kinds of different halachas, because every yid has a daladamas. There's no such thing as a person not having property.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm sorry. So this exchangeable oisios we're saying is similar to the application of his name to an object. What happened to the second level of name in this mashal of the soul? The being called by his name. Where's that? The name itself, this is like the soul and the body connection.
Okay, so we're not finished with it yet. Okay.
But we didn't speak about the level of being called by name.
Not yet.
Parallel here.
Right, not yet.
Okay.
So there is the Oasis HaMachshava, which have this, so to speak, this intermediate stage. Just like in the name, we have the name. The person has a name. That's a reality. The name is applied to a property. So that reality applied to property, but it can be exchanged. he can take the property and sell somebody else. But again, that name, that quality remains with the person. Okay, so this is the Yosef Machshov, right?
You said we spoke about the other thing about the not cautious or but the etzem or. So this example that machshava has a constancy to it; it's always there. Is that the etzem quality of the or? True. When you think about machshava,
This is like the shame applied to property.
even the constancy.
The a constancy that can be exchanged is not really constancy. It's a compromised constancy.
Okay. Oh. Okay.
In etzem it is constant, but in fact it is not constant. In other words, in application it's not constant. This is where we say that it is like the application of the name. As we're going to see, that ultimately the Rabbi is leading to dibur, and we'll see how that differs. But we should, the important thing that we have to understand, the subtleties involved, where the fact that it's constant, and yet at the same time he is able to change them.
He exchanges the icy ice, but he could change what icy ice he's thinking about.
Right.
The fact that
Poishet esatzim in machshava, v'loivish machshava acheres. It's constantly fluttering. Raksha poishet v'loivish. Aval efshel li is bli machshava. But it's impossible to be without machshava. There is some consciousness in the person. It's impossible to be without machshava.
anything we're aware of is considered Oisius Machshava.
Right.
We don't have.
Actual awareness.
Do we have any shaykhs to machshava without oisius? I'm just confused.
Sure.
We do it.
Sure, that's the yeah, of course. Okay. But it's impossible to be without machshava because there is the hislapshus of the nefesh in the goof, and the goof is aware of this inyan, he has a conscious experience of life constantly. So Miniscent told you we once had a guest in the house many years ago. He said that he and his brother, both twins, were born retarded, and then they, through various programs, through various means, they became very functional. And he became a mathematician or whatever it is. But his functionality, he didn't really know what full functionality is. His functionality was very confined. In other words, only when he's consciously engaged. But in terms of an internal consciousness, it eluded him. He would sit by the table, and we were talking about something. And then the talk interrupted for a moment. That moment he would fall asleep. Yes, you're so tired? No. There's nothing going on, so listen. He had the consciousness on a very active level. If you pricked him, he is there. If you don't prick him, nothing happens. Nothing's happening. I told you, he always says to me, I don't understand the logic of buying books. Any book you want, you can go to the library and take it out, read it and read it back. What's the logic? What's the significance of owning books? Ownership is a profound human reality, which it cannot be explained logically. It's the reality of the human being. Speak about it all the time. It's very important. All right, the dibos. Then there is a third level, huh?
So it's interesting that a body is really, so we're really saying a body is conscious of thought, and thought itself is not to do with physicality or being pricked.
No, thought is an neshama thing. And the chai is a nefesh.
So it's
That's
interesting.
why the nefesh gives chayes to everything else, chayes to the thought, to the brain.
And how would it be that a body, which we've described before as completely lifeless and not really relating to life, is now relating to such a subtle message, or
It doesn't really relate. It's overtaken. Just like the sun is rules over the world.
so that's to say the thoughts are not really the body's domain, yet it has them.
That's right.
It senses the soul
The
talking to
body,
it.
I explained, the body never fully relates to the whole idea of life.
Right, but earlier we heard that through the thoughts the body relates to what the soul is telling it.
Yeah. But on principle, the body doesn't become a living entity. I mean, in itself, it's alive because the neshama is in it.
So,
It doesn't get an etzem nefesh, doesn't become a living entity.
and the reason.
As soon as the nefesh leaves, how long does the body last?
All right. But yet,
Nothing there.
in contrast to this mathematician, even when there's nothing going on, a person has a sort of quiet sense of conscious
Well,
life.
yeah, sure. The machshava should tell the story.
Right, and I'm just kind of wondering what would be in it for the body, or how that would really work, because nothing's, like we just said,
No, the
nothing active
neshama
going
is
on.
constantly talking to the body on its level.
Oh, kind of telling it about life itself,
Yeah,
or
constantly.
reminiscing, or whatever it's.
That's right. Everything a person sees is significant.
Subconscious. What is that?
Even seeing the sun, the sky. What?
Mhm.
What is subconsciousness called?
Self-consciousness?
Subconscious.
I'm sorry?
Subconscious. Sub?
Subconscious.
Subconscious.
Is there such a concept?
Subconscious is what is known by us as koiches hanefesh, like seichel and midas. Okay. Not for now. All right. The dibur, then there is speech. That's another koich hanefesh, where the nefesh is mislabesh in the levush hadibur. Harei eis ledaber ve'eis lachshes. This is a posik in Kehos. Eis ledaber ve'eis lachshes. There's a time to speak and a time to refrain from speaking. What does this mean? That speech is not a constant requirement. There's a time where you refrain from speaking. Doesn't mean that the neshama is not there, but you have to refrain from speaking. That levush is not functional. It explains elsewhere. Shegam hadibur einoi nifrod be'emes. It's explained elsewhere that even dibur, which is seemingly such an external phenomenon that it can be interrupted, it's not the neshama can remain in the group, can remain in the person, and he's not speaking. Which seem to be pointing out that the action of dibur is a totally external thing, doesn't really engage in nefesh. He's taking the nefesh outside, and you don't have to be outside. You can be inside and not need this nefesh. So to explain that be'emes is the dibur eina nifred be'emes. That in truth, be'emes, it's not is not really separate. Does not really break away from the person. When they say the word be'emes, it always alludes to a more subtle reality, because superficially it is nifra. But on a truth level, be'emes on the truth level, it's not nifra. After we explain, we go through this way, we'll try to identify what's the truth level in this. The haraya, the proof for this is, where is this reflect itself? That the dibur is ein nifred be'emes. Shavei hadibur poyel kiro behazulas. For dibur, speech, affects a closeness in the other person. Ukmei odom godel hamdaber imechut. And as in the case of an odom godel, a great person speaking with somebody else, harei mis'ale alidei zeh u'miskarev elov. So this other person is elevated as a result, u'miskarev elov, when he comes close to him. This inyan, that he misal al gazol miskarev elov. In dibur there is two aspects, right? There is the nifrod element, the separate aspect, that when a person speaks to somebody, he has imparted to him a certain idea. Now this person can take this idea and deal with it independently. In that respect, it is a davar nifrod. On the other hand, it always remains that even at that level, when it's separate, it always remains that this idea he got from this person. And certainly during the time that this idea is being imparted to him, there is a connection. Even though the connection is through dibur, which is an external thing. He tells him what he knows, and he's telling it to him in his oasis that he should have this knowledge. So there is a total separation. He shares with him a thought, but the sharing of the thought is like two separate entities. To give us a tangible mashal. In halacha is from two people are partners in a field, in a piece of property. So there are two types of partnership. A soda sheyesh bo din chalukah and a soda she'ein bo din chalukah. What is that? Soda sheyesh bo din chalukah means that the soda is large enough that should it be divided in half, and each one should take their half, it would not lose any of its title, any of its shifts, of its status. It's still a field. So this is a soda yesh bo din chalukah. This partnership is such that even while they are partners, they are each one has his chelik in it, independent of the other. They share, each one shares their personal chelik. Then there is a soda she'ein bo din chalukah, a choser she'ein bo din chalukah. Two people live side by side. and they have a little courtyard in front of their house. And this courtyard is not large enough that it should be divided, that it should be able to serve both houses as half of the original chutzner. It would not be called a chutzner. Therefore, this chutzner ain't bodin chaluk. As a matter of fact, halachically, neither one of them can demand to divide it. The only thing he can, depending on the circumstance, he can say, you know what, I'm going to buy out your chelik. But to demand to divide it, he can't, because if you divide it, it's no longer going to have that serviceability, and therefore it's going to lose its status. So now, when there is in Dibur we are sharing an idea. So he's giving you over an idea. So in this sharing of idea, there is both of these. There are two inyanim. There is the fact that the idea has been transferred to you, and now you have it independently. It's like yesh b'di chalukah. They can do away with it, and that becomes yours. Even while it was being transmitted. As we say all the time, how does a person understand the seichel from words? Because he has his own seichel. Even while it's being transmitted, he is like an independent, a separate entity. You can't transmit seichel per se. You can give the kelim of the seichel, and provided that the person is able to understand and draw from the seichel. So he is always separate, a separate entity. If he's a separate entity, then how come this whole interchange causes a hiskarus, a closeness? He gave him a seichel, so he's got his own. It's like chodesh yesh b'nei chalukah. Chodesh yesh b'nei chalukah. It's not a real partnership to start with. Each one is actually using the chodesh independent of the other. It's almost like you come to my backyard, and I don't mind you coming into my backyard. You don't become a partner there. So the chalukah is inherent in the chotzer. Even though they are separation.
This is the yesh b'din chalukah.
Yeah.
So this would make you think there'd be no kiruv through the.
So therefore there would be no kiruv because what's being imparted is given you to completely. Nothing is retained back. It's given to you. It becomes yours. You understand it with your own seichel. And you retain it.
Why is the mashal with a courtyard that is in fact together? Like they have it together, right? And rather than just giving him a piece of property.
Oh, so I'm saying that despite the fact that he's giving you a piece of property, there is the element in Dibur that brings about kiruv.
Where did the Ayin b'din chalukah come in?
To point out that even though in this case yesh b'din chalukah, right, you can take, but it has the element of Ayin b'din chalukah as well. That the horaya in the fact that there is a kiruv affected by it.
There wouldn't be kiruv if it was just yesh b'din chalukah.
Well, that's right.
Even though you're both sharing the courtyard.
Sharing, but you're sharing as two separate places.
So where's the kiruv in the Dibur? The kiruv is that you really can't forget that it's his idea, even though you walked away with it. Is that it?
Well, that and the very fact that it was imparted to you, and there's a sense of okay.
There's a sense of
let's translate it more factually. We explained many times that when a person speaks even something that he knows thoroughly, that he thought about already many times, and even if he taught it many times, at the time when he teaches it, he has to relive the entire seichel on his own. Otherwise, it will not be a teaching. So the time when he is teaching, he's actually sharing, he's actually relating on a personal level his seichel with the other person's seichel, even though what he is transmitting is in Dibur.
Why is it so? Why is it so? If you know something well,
What?
why is it so? If you know something well for many years, and he's just giving it over to a phone, why does he have to relive it while he gives it over?
Because the words that are transmitted, without your experiencing the significance of the seichel at this time, are what's called lifeless words. And they're not mashpia anything.
It's not Gurmayotsim in Alev, something like that.
Yeah, Ma'alev, Ma'aseichel. So these are lifeless words.
Like singing and eating without neshama.
What?
Like singing and eating without neshama.
That's right. Did you ever hear a person speak in monotone? If we read this like this, שפוישת ולויבש אבל אי אפשר לי יש בלי מחשבה ודיבור הרי אצל רב ויש לאפשס וכולי ומבואי במקמחה שגם הדיבור הניחת באמץ והראי שהרי דיבור פי ומכיר ועזור כמי אודם גודל עמדה בנימחת הרי מסעלה הרי די זה מזכר ולא בכולי והמושל יספשס.
That's amazing. Can we do the whole show?
Tranquility.
I was once in a subway train in a big airport in Georgia, huge airport, and they have a subway, and the train runs by itself. It starts, and the announcement is also synthetic sound, voice. Now they have synthetic voice that you can listen to. Those days, synthetic voice was mamash, totally deprived of any intonation. You can get sick listening to it. Really. The vehicle is arriving. Okay, finish.
So the other person is getting a peek into his neshama. So it's like the person that you're relating to, you're talking to, you get to peek into what's going on inside of you.
There's a relationship to the life, there's a living relationship in Dibur. And the Dibur actually affects a kiruv, a closeness by the Zulus. It draws him closer. As for example, a great person speaking to someone else, this person is elevated by as a result. And he comes closer to this person, to the Adam God. Even though he and the Adam God are in two different worlds, but he comes closer to the Adam God because this Dibur was not just the Oisius, but there was Chayas in this Dibur.
Even the villager that saw
Because it says,
even the villager that saw the king.
Yeah, that's right.
Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of town.
The Hamoshol, the Hispastus Hashem, Aleza Dovor. The Moshel of the Hispastus Hashem, Aleza Dovor, where the name is mispashit on some object. Like I said originally, Harezek Moi Hadibur. This is like the Dibur, like the speech. The Mekomo came hu levush hanivdal min ho'etz. But by dibur, even though by dibur there is a connection, it's not nifrad be'emes. All right, let me go back. I
Didn't we
promise.
just say this was from Rakshava? We said that this thing was.
We'll come back. Nifrad be'emes. This is first nifrad be'emes. What does nifrad be'emes mean? So that would try to explain. Many times we emphasize that be'emes is a very subtle, very profound message. And here we can probably get a little bit of a tangible view of what that refers to. Here is a dibur, as we said, the dibur is actually imparting a piece of knowledge, of my personal knowledge, to somebody else. And he takes it away and goes away with it. It says in Chassidus, the Rebbe explains that if, let's say, you eavesdrop, let's say if two people are talking, and one is explaining a reason to another, and you are sitting there and you're privy to the entire discussion, but it's not addressed at you, it's addressed at the other person. You're able to follow the entire discussion. And yet, it will not have the same impact as it will have on the person to whom it's addressed. Because by you it is nifrad mamush. It's not meant for you.
It'll have some impact.
You not impact. You'll have impact because what you know, whatever you make out of it. But the instruction itself will not have an impact. It wasn't meant for you.
Mitzad the instructor.
Sorry?
Mitzad the instructor.
Yeah.
Mitzad the listener. He can't take it for himself.
He can take it and build it up, but the instruction, the impact of the teacher will not be there. This is a very important Ayin that we discuss all the time. And you see the teacher and all that. It will not. There it is, and over nifrad mamush. Now, these are two people, two separate people. I'm talking now, going back to the one to whom the instruction is addressed to. They're two separate people, and their connection is only via the kelim of the seichel, the oisius. That's how they connect. They can transmit to each other their thoughts. What is this element that enables them to be connected on the level we say that is ein adover nifrad mamash, and there is an effect. And why is it a difference whether it's aimed at him or not aimed at him? Why is it he hears exactly the same words, and he processes exactly the same way? And the explanation is, just as we explained before about the name of a person, that a person, by virtue of the reality of the person himself, has a hispashtus, has a presence. The reason that we can communicate is because we are in the same presence.
And the eavesdropper is not really.
An eavesdropper is not.
I didn't understand what you said. Is because we are in the same presence?
You are not in the presence, so how can you possibly understand it?
Well, that's not fair to say. But
No,
okay.
you're right, you're right.
I don't usually object, but I'm objecting this time.
Okay, no, you're right. I take it back. You're absolutely in the presence.
What do you mean to say? What does that mean to say? The speaker and the listener are in the same presence. It's like they combine.
Let's go back to what we said about a name or ownership. How can a person own property? It's a separate entity. You look at the property, there's nothing to say that it has to be this person's property. It can be any person's property. It could be hefker, it could be no man's land. What is the principle behind this ownership of property? What's the principle behind the name, as we discussed it to great length? A name, that a person has a name, and we can understand it better in contrast to the fact that an animal cannot have a name. An animal has only its own mitzias, its own tangible mitzias. A human being's mitzias is a real mitzias. It impacts the entire world. Like we said, if the world should be without any human beings, it's nothing. Put one human being in the world, the whole world changes. It becomes a real world, worthy of its creator. A human presence impacts, he's present not only in himself, he's present everywhere, in the entire mitzvahs of the world. In reality, that's how it is.
An animal has no presence at all, is that it?
An animal has a presence only in the tangible level. Doesn't have a presence beyond, in other words, in impact. Doesn't have the daladamas, doesn't have the surrounding reality. As an element, a presence in itself. There is no impact by its presence. Which is why you say, the world is not human being. Animals are there, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. And we said, if the world should be destroyed suddenly, and nobody suffers, then nothing happened. If you look from an animal's perspective, nothing happened. A human being's perspective, it's a huge thing that happened. Because the whole reality is represented by his presence. All right. We can go on discussing this, but we mentioned many times, and there's always additional clarity and depth and so forth, but for the purposes of our discussion, I think this will be sufficient. The fact that there is this communication level, that there's a difference between if two people are talking to each other, or somebody is eavesdropping and listening to the whole conversation. The two people are talking to each other. They are actually in the same area, in the same reality.
Which is the speaker's hispashtus?
The speaker's hispashtus and the recipient's hispashtus. They're in the same reality. The eavesdropper is in a different reality. And by eavesdropper, does not have that kiruv element, even though he hears the entire talk, the entire sefer.
The word presence here, you're saying hispashtus means presence, or hispashtus is a synonym for presence?
The reality of presence. This is what the emes. What's the reality of presence? An animal hardly is present, and a human being is present. An animal does not have the reality of presence. A human being has the emes, the reality of presence.
And
Okay.
that's hispashtus.
And it's expressed in the hispashtus. It's expressed in the hispashtus. What's the reality of presence? We can point to it, we cannot really identify it in words. What is the reality? What is the principle of ownership? How can you explain that? You can't explain it. You can only a human being sense it that yes, that's real. Because it's and over atzmi, like we said, etzem Hashem, you can't explain what it is. You can explain his pasha, but not etzem. There is the hispashtus of the person upon his property because he is an atzmi. Because a person's presence in the world is not just to experience, to eat and sleep and to experience his own life, but to impact, to be a presence in the world. So this is the pshat, nifrad be'emes. Ela nifrad be'emes. The tangible aspect of the dibur is a nifrad. But the underlying truth of this dibur, what correlates these two people that allows them to actually communicate in that flawless manner, that's a completely different thing. That's a reality. And that is contained also in this dibur. And this is why there is such an impact. That he becomes close to him. Because he has shared his reality, he had shared his domain. And the sharing of this domain does not mean that they are in the four arms. Right. If one is across the street 100 feet away, 100 yards away, and he calls him by name, he's already sharing in his domain.
This is like the host being in the same room as the guest.
That's right.
And paying attention to him versus learning Rambam in the corner.
That's right. And I said that the same thing. I'm sorry, just 1 second. The same thing is also illustrated in a situation when you participate in a party. This is very subtle. You participate in a party. There's a party going on. And you're interested in the party for whatever reason, but you're not invited. Nobody objects to your presence here. Nobody cares. Nobody objects at all to your presence here. It's a party of 10,000 people. And you're not displacing anybody. Everybody belongs there, and you don't belong there. The emes is like it. You're there, you see everything that's going on. If there's entertainment, you're going to be enjoying the entertainment even with everybody else. But it is meant for them and not meant for you. They will go away with a profound satisfaction. You will go away by just having enjoyed it for the moment.
So you said a moment ago, this is same if you call somebody across the street by name, you're sharing this thing. So that's what this is similar to?
Well, yeah, I'm saying even there, this calling somebody is infecting, is expressing, is effectuating a connection between them. You know the villager who came back from Petersburg, and he said, you know, the king spoke to me. So they said, the king spoke to you? Wow, what did the king say? Everybody gathers around him. And then they said, what did the king say? The king said to me, get out of here.
So he wasn't sharing his presence.
Now,
Yeah.
we're here focusing on two people communicating, fully communicating. In other words, the listener and the
And the speaker.
and the speaker understand the same thing. Now there are cases, and actually there is what's called variety, and in this room there's many people who listen to you and who might understand at a different level. So
But everybody participates equally.
Mhm.
Nobody is here, I don't mean to talk to you. It's not true. Not everybody understands equally, it's true. But everybody is an equal participant.
But the understanding is different from one individual to the other.
Yes, of course. That's what you're talking. We're talking about that the dibur is separated from the speaker.
Uh-huh.
Of course, that's not everybody understands the same way.
This halacha, what you're saying right now, this halacha of Amsha Besodos.
Of the what?
Amsha Besodos.
Yeah.
That
The Yosef with Tfilah and Tzibur, they were Shliach Tzibur, is that what you mean?
yeah. That would make them as this.
That's right.
But it has to be the intention.
No, they don't
of
even
both
know.
sides.
The Emerson Gilot, it's an interesting thing. I don't know if you're familiar with this halacha. If you are not able to be in shul for some reason, but you know when the minyan davens, and you daven at the same time, you have an effect of joining the minyan. Okay. Now, that does not mean that tomorrow we're not going to come to shul.
That could be me.
It has to be me, right?
You're not counted though.
You're not counting the minyan, right? But and counting the minyan is very important. You're the one who construct the minyan, build it. Okay, but I think we understand the significance of this. A human being, a papagay, you know what a papagay is? A parrot, can also pronounce words. Is there a similarity to human being speaking and a parrot speaking? There's no similarity. Why? Because a human being, when he speaks with the sense that there is a whole environment to whom he's speaking. And he belongs, he encompasses that environment.
The environment without the actual speech. Two people sitting close to each other, staring each other in the eyes, and there's a cue.
Yeah, that's why they're able to speak.
High level, huh?
Yeah.
Without the speech.
That enables the speech. I'm saying even in speech, we see that environment. So this is what he says in a nifrad be'emes. It's nifrad, but in a nifrad be'emes, when you go down to the truth of the matter. And what is the truth of the matter? What is emes?
That which is
Hashem, Elohim, emes. That's emes. Emes is the fundamental unity, reality. Because of that, there is emes. Because of that, there is sense. Why is a human being so great, as we point out, that he is able to impact, and he's got a real presence? Because he is a godly creation. He was created by God specifically, and he is given that quality. If he were a derivative and evolved from a monkey, he would not have ever acquired that status. Whether it's 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 1,000,000 years, or 1,000,000,000 years, makes no difference. He would never acquire that status. He must always remain essentially an animal. And those people who subscribe to that idea continue to say a human being is such an animal. Because he can't become a human being from an animal. It just cannot happen.
Too much of a leap.
Huh?
Too much of a leap.
It's a different world. It's true, it's a leap. But it's not just a leap. It's not a leap in proximity. You can't make such a big jump. It's a different reality. This is it, gentlemen, for this morning. Baruch sei gesund, and I apologize. Of course, I didn't mean it.
No apology needed.
Call to sei gesund.
That's a powerful bracha.
No.